I parked my Honda Civic near my house on Maple Street and sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes, staring at the familiar facade. 3 years ago, I ran out of here with a backpack and $200 in my pocket. Now I was returning for my father's 50th birthday. The house looked even more run down. The paint on the fence was peeling, the lawn was yellowed from the California sun, and the mailbox hung crookedly on a single bolt. The neighbor's dog, Rex, still barked at every passing car. Nothing had changed in Escondido over the years, except that everything looked even more dreary. I took the box of cake from Sweet Delta Bakery out of the car and headed for the porch. Cigarette butts and empty beer cans littered the steps. Typical of my family. My brother Oswald opened the door before I had a chance to knock. He had put on weight, his hair was thinner, and his face wore a permanent expression of discontent. "Oh, look who's crawled out of the woodwork," he said, not even moving to let me in. Delia herself. "Hi, Oswald. Happy birthday to Dad." "Yeah, right. You remembered your family after 3 years." He reluctantly stepped aside. "Come on in since you're here. Just don't think we were waiting for you." The living room smelled of fried meat, cheap beer, and cigarettes. Father Bart sat in his old leather chair in front of the TV, which was showing baseball. Mother Edith bustled about the table, setting out plates with nervous energy. They both froze when they saw me. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, handing him the box. "Chocolate just the way you like it." "From Sweet Delta." Bart took the box without even looking at me. His hands were covered in motor oil as usual. "Thanks," he muttered. "I didn't think you'd come. I thought you'd forgotten your way home." "Well, I didn't," I said, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "How are you?" "Still working at Johnson Auto Service?" "Where else would I go at 50? My father opened a can of Budweiser. "Unlike some people, I've been working at the same place for 22 years. It's called stability." Edith set the plates down loudly on the table. "Where have you been all this time?" Her voice sounded tense. "You didn't even call once. We were worried." "I was working. Renting an apartment, getting my life together." "Working where?" Oswald plopped down in a chair. "Waitressing again? Or maybe you're a shift manager at McDonald's now." I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to tell them the truth. "You're silent, so everything's the same." My mother pursed her lips. "And we thought maybe you'd finally come to your senses. Maybe you found yourself a decent man." "I've come to my senses, Mom. Just not the way you wanted." "Really? How?" Bart narrowed his eyes. "Did you get rich? Did you marry well?" "No, I'm not married." "Of course not." Edith sighed heavily. "Who would want you with your temper? I remember how you used to fight with everyone at school, thinking you were smarter than everyone else." "Mom, let's not bring up the past." "Why not? Shouldn't we tell the truth?" Her mother's voice grew louder. "You ran away from home like an ungrateful brat, 3 years without a word, and now you show up with a cake, thinking we'll forget everything?" "I'm not asking anyone to forget anything. Just look at yourself." Oswald waved his hand. "Worn-out jeans, a cheap t-shirt. You can't even dress properly." "What's wrong with my clothes?" "Everything's wrong with them." Edith stood up and began pacing around the room. "Normal people your age are starting families, building careers. And you? Where's your career? Where are your achievements?" "Mom, you don't know how I live." I know." She stopped in front of me. "You get by with odd jobs, renting some dump. That's not living, that's existing. What do you think I should do?" "Anything." Bart put his beer on the table. "Study to be an accountant like your mother, or get an office job. Find a normal job instead of running around cafes." "I don't run around cafes." "Then where?" Oswald leaned forward. "Tell us where you work. You're so successful." I remained silent, which made them even angrier. "Exactly!" Edith clapped her hands. "You're ashamed to say. Do you know how embarrassed I am when the neighbors ask about you? What am I supposed to say? That my daughter is out somewhere doing God knows what?" "Mom, what do the neighbors have to do with it?" "They have everything to do with it. Normal children help their parents. They don't disgrace them." Edith's voice rose to a scream. "You're a disgrace to this family." "Disgrace." All three stared at me with the same expression of contempt. I slowly stood up. "I understand." What do you understand? Bart also stood up. That you finally realize what a failure you are? No, I understand that I shouldn't have come. You've always been so proud. Edith shook her head. But you have nothing to be proud of. You have a pathetic existence. Pathetic? I turned to her. That's exactly what it is. My mother came closer. 24 years old and you're useless. You're still a nobody. The words hung in the air. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? Oswald smirked. Running away again? Let her go. Bart waved his hand. We have enough problems without her. I left the house and got into my car. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. 45 minutes later, I was climbing the marble steps of my mansion in Hillside Heights. Reginald Finch opened the door before I could get my keys out. Gray-haired, fit, and dressed in an impeccable suit, he looked exactly like a real butler should look. Welcome back, boss, he said calmly. I walked into the hall, where a stack of business papers lay on a marble table. Contracts, reports, documents for the purchase of new real estate. My real life, which my family knew nothing about. In the morning, I woke up in my 40-square-meter bedroom with a view of the mountains. 3 years ago, I slept on a couch in a one-room apartment that cost $300 a month. Back then, it seemed like it would be forever. Reginald had already prepared breakfast, an omelet with salmon and freshly squeezed orange juice. I sat down at the dining room table, which could seat 12 people, and couldn't help remembering how it all began. For the first 6 months after I ran away from home, I worked as a waitress at El Toro, a cafe on the outskirts of town. 12-hour shifts, rude customers, a salary of $1,200 a month barely covered the rent for a room in a workers' hostel. I ate instant noodles, wore the same jacket over and over, and scrimped on every little thing. But even then, I never thought about going home. The turning point came during a chance conversation with the cafe owner, Carlos Mendez. He was a man in his 50s who had come from Mexico 20 years ago and built a small chain of diners from scratch. He constantly complained about how much time he spent doing the books. You know what, Delia? He said to me one evening as we were closing the cafe. All these accounting programs are either too complicated for people like me or cost a fortune. There aren't any simple, inexpensive ones. If someone made a decent app for small businesses, they'd make millions. I remembered those words. In my spare time, I started learning programming through free online courses. I sat up late at night in the city library because the internet in my dorm worked intermittently. The librarian, Dolores Rios, was initially suspicious of a young woman who occupied a computer until closing time, but she eventually got used to it and even brought me coffee sometimes. 4 months later, I wrote my first app. A simple financial accounting program specifically for cafes and small shops. Nothing complicated, just a user-friendly interface for recording income and expenses and automatically calculating profits. Carlos became my first client and my first investor. He paid $500 for a program that saved him 10 hours of work a week. Miss Delia, Reginald interrupted my memories, your car is here. You have a meeting with the board of directors at 10 o'clock. I finished my juice and stood up. Today we were going to discuss the purchase of another shopping center. The company was growing faster than I had ever planned. Crispin Development's office was located in the 20-story Park Plaza building in the business center of Escondido. I rented the entire 15th floor, 1,200 square meters of open space with floor-to-ceiling windows. 23 people worked there. An IT department of 8 programmers, 4 financiers, 3 lawyers, 2 marketers, 5 managers, and administrative staff. People who knew me exclusively as DM Crispin, a young and very successful entrepreneur. Good morning, Miss Crispin, greeted Secretary Jennifer Blaine, a woman in her 40s with perfect blonde hair and always impeccable makeup. In 3 years of working there, I had never seen her disheveled or tired. The profit reports for the last quarter are on your desk. Mr. Henderson from Citibank called. He wants to discuss extending the credit line for a new project, and Mr. Vasquez from IT asked you to call him back. Something about a new mobile app. Thanks, Jenny. First the meeting, then we'll deal with the rest. I walked into my corner office. The walls were glass from floor to ceiling, and there was a massive black leather desk with two 27-inch monitors displaying real-time sales graphs for my mobile apps. Revenue had grown 18% over the past month. Not bad for a company that was only 3 years old. Diplomas and certificates hung on the wall. Not my real ones, of course, but ones I had bought to create the right professional image. An MBA from the University of Baltimore in the name of Diane Crispin, a certificate of completion of commercial real estate courses, membership in the California Association of Young Entrepreneurs, an award for innovation in mobile technology. It was all part of a carefully constructed legend. Delia Mae Crispin did not officially exist in the business world of Escondido. Only DM Crispin existed, a mysterious businesswoman who preferred to work through proxies and rarely appeared at public events. At 10 in the morning, the weekly board meeting began. 5 people sat around a redwood oval table: CFO Marcus Stone, a 40-year-old man with graying temples and a habit of constantly clicking his ballpoint pen; General Counsel Patricia Yard, a thin woman with glasses who never smiled at work; IT Director Ramon Vasquez, a 35-year-old Mexican with tattoos on his arms and an amazing talent for programming; Development Director Nancy Fox, an energetic blonde who could sell anything to anyone; and me. "Okay," I began, opening a folder of documents. "Today, we're looking at an offer to buy the Oaks Mall on West Street." Marcus laid out the financial calculations for everyone. The current market value of the property is $12 million. The owners are willing to sell for $10 million in cash because they urgently need the money for another project. The estimated return on investment is 4 years at the current rent level. "What are the problems with the property?" I asked. "2 large tenants are moving out next month," Nancy chimed in. "A sports store and a bookstore. We'll either have to find replacements or temporarily lower the rent to attract new tenants." "I have a suggestion," Ramon interjected. "We could put our new mobile app customer service center there. We'd save on renting a separate office and attract additional traffic to the mall. People would come to us for technical support and buy something else in other stores while they're there." I nodded. Ramon always thought practically and found ways to combine different projects. "Patricia, what are the legal details of the deal?" "Overall, it's a standard commercial real estate purchase," replied the lawyer, without looking up from her documents. "There are some minor zoning restrictions, no entertainment venues serving alcohol after 10 p.m., but that doesn't apply to us. We can have the documents ready in a week if we make a decision today." "Great. Marcus, get the financing ready. We're buying." "Cash or credit?" asked the CFO. "Cash. I don't want to overpay the bank in interest." Everyone nodded and began to disperse. After the meeting, I stayed alone in the office and allowed myself a moment to relax. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that I would be buying shopping centers for $10 million, just like I used to buy chocolate bars in a store. My first big purchase was a small office center with 4 tenants for $500,000. I made the money selling mobile apps. By that time, I already had more than 20 programs for various types of small businesses: hair salons, car washes, pizzerias, dental clinics, auto repair shops. They all used my simple and relatively inexpensive solutions. I purchased the property through a shell company on the advice of Frederick Toms, a corporate lawyer I met by chance. In one consultation, this man taught me more about running a business than I'd learned in 6 months of independent study. "You see, Miss Crispin," he explained to me in his office at the time, "truly wealthy people never own large assets directly. They have companies that own other companies, which in turn own assets. This protects them from unnecessary taxes and lawsuits and provides many other advantages." He charged me $1,000 for the consultation, but in the end, he saved me tens of thousands in taxes and legal risks. I quickly learned my lesson and created a whole network of 7 interconnected companies. Crispin Development was the parent company, and the others specialized in different types of assets: commercial real estate, IT products, stock investments, and venture projects. On paper, I was a regular employee receiving a salary. In reality, I was the sole owner of the entire structure. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I went to lunch at the Bella Vista restaurant on the first floor of our building. The restaurant also belonged to me, another successful investment that paid for itself in 8 months. The manager, Anthony Costa, an Italian from the South, always reserved a table for me by the panoramic window overlooking the entire city. "How are you, Miss Crispin?" he asked, handing me the leather menu. "How's the new restaurant app working?" "It's working great. How are your online orders?" "They've increased by 30% in the last month. Your programmers did everything exactly as we asked. Now customers can order tables, takeout, and even plan banquets through the app." I smiled. That was one of the main advantages of owning an IT company. I could create customized technology solutions for my other businesses, and that gave us a serious competitive advantage. After lunch, I returned to the office and immersed myself in studying financial reports. Last month's profit was $420,000. 3 years ago, that amount seemed astronomical to me. Now I was earning that much every 30 days, and it no longer surprised me. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Ramon came in with news about another project. "Delia," he was the only one who addressed me by name, "we have a problem with the app for car services. Customers are complaining that the program is too slow when processing large databases." "How large?" "Some services keep records for 10,000 cars a month. Our current architecture isn't designed for such volumes." "How long will it take to rework?" "A month for programming, another 2 weeks for testing." "Do it, and build in the ability to scale up to 100,000 records for the future." Ramon nodded and left. I returned to my documents, but half an hour later, Jennifer interrupted me. "Miss Crispin, you have a visitor. Mr. Henderson from the bank is here about the credit line." The next hour was spent discussing financial instruments. The bank offered to increase the credit line to $15 million at 7% per annum. The terms were favorable, but I rarely used borrowed funds, preferring to work with my own money. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was reviewing resumes of candidates for open positions. We needed 2 programmers, a marketing specialist, a lawyer, and a senior accountant for our subsidiary, Integra Finance. 17 applications had been submitted for the accountant position. Jennifer brought me a stack of selected resumes. "I've picked out the 5 most suitable candidates," she said. "They have between 15 and 25 years of experience, and all have good references." I started leafing through the documents. Robert Nixon, 42 years old, had worked as a chief accountant at a construction company. Maria Gonzalez, 38 years old, specialized in tax planning. David Brown, 51, experience working with international corporations. And then I saw a familiar name, Edith Crispin, 52, secondary education, 20 years of experience as an accountant, current employer, Caltech Services, salary, $3,200 per month, asking for $4,000. I reread the name several times, not believing my eyes. "Jenny," I called to my secretary, "what can you tell me about Edith Crispin?" "Solid experience, positive references from her current employer, a little overpaid for a vocational education, but her experience makes up for it. The only thing is, she seemed very nervous when she submitted her application and asked several times about the requirements for candidates." "Did she submit the application in person?" "Yes, the day before yesterday. A thin woman, very neatly dressed. She asked about career prospects, whether there was health insurance, and whether vacation time was paid. She clearly needs a stable job." I leaned back in my chair. So my mother was looking for a new job, and she had no idea that she had applied to a company owned by her unsuccessful daughter. "Schedule an interview for her tomorrow," I said. "At 2 o'clock. "What about the other candidates?" "The same, but at different times. I want to see everyone." Jennifer nodded and left to make the calls. I was left alone with my thoughts and my mother's resume. 20 years of experience, a modest salary, dreams of a better job. I wondered what she would say when she found out who her potential employer was. Tomorrow would be an interesting day. On the morning of the interview, I woke up earlier than usual. Outside my bedroom window, the pre-dawn sky over Escondido was gray, and my mind was racing with thoughts about the upcoming meeting. In a few hours, my mother would learn the truth about what her failed daughter had really become. At breakfast, Reginald, impeccably dressed and unruffled as always, handed me the morning paper and freshly squeezed orange juice. "What are your plans for today, Miss Delia?" he asked, pouring coffee into a thin porcelain cup. "It's a special day," I replied. taking a bite of a croissant. Today, my mother is coming to my company for an interview. I assume she doesn't know? Absolutely not. To her, I'm still a failure who gets by on odd jobs. Reginald smiled slightly. This will be interesting. I arrived at the office at 9 in the morning, an hour earlier than usual. I wanted to prepare for the meeting and think through every detail. Jennifer was already there, sorting the morning mail. Good morning, Miss Crispin. Today's candidates have confirmed their attendance. Edith Crispin will be here at 2 o'clock and the rest after 3. Great. Do we have the technical capability to record the interviews? Of course. The conference room has a video conferencing system with recording. Would you like me to turn it on? Yes, but the recording is for my eyes only. Also, I would like to observe the first part of the interview remotely. You conduct the preliminary interview and I'll join later. Jennifer nodded without asking any questions. In 3 years of working for me, she had learned not to be surprised by my sometimes strange requests. I went to my office and tried to focus on my current tasks, but my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming meeting. How would the mother behave? What would she say when she realized the truth? Would she try to justify what she had said yesterday, or act as if nothing had happened? At 11:30, Marcus Stone came in with the profit reports. Delia, we have excellent news. Revenue from mobile apps is up 23% compared to last month. The restaurant program is doing especially well. 420 establishments are already using our system. Great. How's the shopping center going? The documents are almost ready. We're signing the purchase agreement tomorrow. $10 million in cash, as agreed. I nodded, looking at the figures in the report. 3 years ago, such sums seemed fantastic to me. Now it was just ordinary business statistics. Marcus, how are things at Integra Finance? Do they really need a new senior accountant? Definitely. The volume of transactions has doubled in 6 months, and Susan Palmer can no longer cope on her own. We need an experienced person who can take over some of the tax planning and reporting. I see. We'll be interviewing several candidates today. At 1 o'clock, I locked myself in my office and turned on the video surveillance system connected to conference room number 2. The monitor showed an empty room with a long dark wood table and 8 leather chairs. In an hour, my mother would be sitting at one of them. At 1:55, Jennifer announced over the intercom, "Miss Crispin, the first candidate has arrived. I'll take you to the conference room." I turned on the sound and video. A familiar figure appeared on the screen, my mother in her best dark blue suit, the one she had worn to all important events for the past 10 years. Her hair was neatly styled, her makeup subtle but meticulous. She was carrying an old black handbag and a folder with documents. Edith sat down on the edge of the chair, straightening her back and folding her hands on the table. She was clearly very nervous, constantly adjusting her hair and fidgeting with the edge of the folder. Jennifer entered the meeting room with a notepad and a smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Crispin. My name is Jennifer Blaine. I am the assistant to the director. We'll start with a preliminary interview, and then the company director will join us." "Okay," replied her mother, her voice trembling slightly with nervousness. "I'm very grateful for the opportunity to interview. Tell me a little about yourself and your work experience." Edith opened the folder and took out her resume. "My name is Edith Crispin. I am 52 years old. I have been working as an accountant for 20 years, the last 8 at Caltech Services. I do a full cycle of accounting, prepare tax reports, and work with primary documentation." "Why did you decide to change jobs?" Her mother hesitated a little, choosing her words carefully. "There are no career prospects at my current company. My salary hasn't been adjusted for inflation in 3 years, and there's no health insurance. I'm looking for a place where I can use my experience and get decent pay." "What salary would you like to earn?" $4,000 a month, Edith replied, blushing slightly. "I know it's more than I'm making now, but I'm willing to take on additional responsibilities." Jennifer nodded and wrote something down in her notebook. "Tell me about your strengths as a professional." "I'm very detail-oriented and never make mistakes in my calculations. I'm well-versed in tax law and keep up with changes. I'm proficient in various software programs, from simple Excel to specialized accounting systems." "And your weaknesses?" Edith thought for a moment. I guess sometimes I spend too much time double-checking my work. I want to be sure that everything is correct, so I spend more time than necessary. I listened to this conversation and was amazed. At work, my mother was a completely different person. Calm, professional, confident. At home, she turned into a perpetually dissatisfied woman who took out her frustrations on her family. "Miss Crispin," Jennifer said, "what do you know about our company?" "To be honest, not very much," my mother admitted. "I know you're in real estate and IT. I read on the website that it's a young but fast-growing company. I like working for growing companies. There are more opportunities to prove yourself. Do you have any questions about the position or the working conditions?" "Yes, a few. Is there health insurance? Is vacation time paid? What are the working hours?" She paused. "I'm sorry for asking, but how stable is the company? I'm looking for a long-term position. Full health insurance, 4 weeks of paid vacation per year, standard schedule, 9 to 6. As for stability, the company has shown steady profit growth for the 3rd year in a row." My mother visibly relaxed. "That sounds very appealing." "Great. Now the company director will join us for the final part of the interview." I turned off the video link and stood up from the table. It was time for the main event. On the way to the meeting room, my heart was beating so fast, it felt like I was going on a first date, not a business meeting with my own mother. I stopped in front of the meeting room door, pulled myself together, and went in. Edith's reaction was exactly as I had expected. At first, she just stared, not understanding what was happening. Then her face paled and her mouth fell open. "Delia?" she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Mom," I said calmly, sitting down across from her. "Jennifer, thank you, you can go." The secretary left, leaving us alone. My mother continued to stare at me as if I were a ghost. "I don't understand. You work for this company? But how? When?" "I don't work for this company, Mom. I own it." Edith slowly sank back into her chair. She was silent for a few minutes, digesting the information. "You own it?" she finally asked. "But that's impossible. You're a failure? A disgrace to the family?" I finished for her. "Yes, I remember what you said yesterday. But if you own the company, then why didn't you say so yesterday? Why did you let us talk to you like that? Would you have listened if I had tried to explain?" My mother fell silent, and a flash of understanding crossed her eyes. "We wouldn't have believed you," she said quietly. "Exactly. You would have thought I was making it up to make myself look important. But how is that possible? You're only 24. 3 years ago, when I left home, I started programming. I created mobile apps for small businesses. I invested the money I earned in real estate. Then I started an IT company. One thing led to another." Edith shook her head. "But why did you hide it from your family?" "Because I wanted to succeed on my own, without anyone's help, and because I knew that if I told you, you would treat me differently, not as a person, but as a source of money." "That's not fair." "Really?" I leaned forward. "Yesterday you yelled at me and called me a failure. Today you're sitting here talking to me politely because I can give you a job. Do you see the difference?" My mother blushed. We didn't know." "Exactly. You judged me by my appearance without trying to find out the truth." We sat in silence for a while. Edith fiddled with the edge of her folder, and I watched her reaction. Finally, she looked up. "So this is some kind of revenge? For yesterday?" "No, Mom. This is a normal job interview. You applied for a position as senior accountant at a subsidiary of Integra Finance. I'm considering your application along with others. And you'll decide whether to hire me or not?" "Yes. What if I say I don't want to work for my own daughter? That's your right. No one's forcing you." Edith fell silent again, thinking about the situation. "And if I get the job, how are we going to build a relationship? At the office, you'll be a regular employee and I'll be your boss. At home, if you want to maintain a family relationship at all, we'll remain mother and daughter." "You doubt that I'll want to?" "After yesterday, yes." Her mother lowered her eyes. "We were wrong. I was wrong. But you have to understand." We didn't know. Mom, it's not that you didn't know about my income. It's how you treated me. The contempt, the constant criticism, the comparisons to Oswald. It had nothing to do with how much I earned. We just wanted you to settle down, according to your standards, according to your understanding of success. Edith nodded. Yes, you're probably right. I stood up and walked over to the window. Below, in the Escondido business district, people were bustling about, cars were driving by, and big city life was going on. Part of that life now depended on the decisions I made in this office. Mom, I'll give you this job if you want it. The salary is $4,500 a month, full health insurance, 4 weeks of paid vacation. You start on Monday. 4.5? But I only asked for 4. You have good experience, and we really need a senior accountant. But there are conditions. What are they? First, you address me as Miss Crispin in the office, just like all the other employees. Second, you don't tell anyone that we're related. Not your coworkers, not your family. But why not my family? Because I want to choose when to tell your dad and Oswald the truth. I want to see their reaction. I understand. And the third condition? There is no third condition, only these 2. Her mother thought for a few minutes. All right, she finally said. I agree. And Delia, thank you, for your work and for not holding a grudge about yesterday. I don't hold a grudge, Mom, but some things have to change in our relationship. What exactly? Respect. You're used to thinking of me as a failure who can't get her life together. Now you know that's not true. I want Dad and Oswald to understand that too. When are you going to tell them? Soon. Very soon. Edith gathered her papers and stood up. Should I go? Yes. Come in at 9 on Monday morning and ask for Jennifer. She'll brief you and introduce you to your colleagues. And Mom, yes? Congratulations on your new job. For the first time in the entire conversation, her mother smiled. Thank you, daughter. When Edith left, I was alone in the conference room. The sun was setting outside, painting the Escondido sky orange and pink. The first step had been taken. My mother knew the truth and had accepted it. Now it was time for the rest of the family. I returned to my office, where documents for the purchase of the shopping center and profit reports lay on my desk. The usual work of a successful entrepreneur. But today, everything seemed different. Today, for the first time in 3 years, I felt that family relationships could change. For better or for worse, only time would tell. A week had passed since my mother started working at Integra Finance. She arrived at 9 o'clock sharp every morning, performed her duties professionally, and addressed me exclusively as Miss Crispin. At home, she pretended to work at a regular company, never mentioning who her real employer was. On Saturday morning, Oswald called me. Delia, your mother said you wanted to come over for dinner on Sunday. Is that true? Yes, I want to talk to you. About what? You'll see tomorrow. On Sunday at 6 in the evening, I parked my car near the house on Maple Street again, but this time there was a folder with documents and several envelopes in the trunk. My father opened the door. He looked surprised but not hostile. Come in, he said simply. The whole family was gathered in the living room. My mother sat on the sofa, avoiding my gaze. Oswald settled into an armchair with a can of beer. The atmosphere was tense but not as aggressive as it had been a week ago. Well, said Bart, what did you want to talk about? I took several documents out of the folder and placed them on the coffee table. I want to tell you what I've been doing for the last 3 years. We've already discussed everything, Oswald grumbled. You were offended by us. We were harsh. Let's forget about it and move on. No, we won't forget, because you still don't know the truth. I took out the first document, my income statement for the past year. My annual income is $5,200,000. I own an IT company, I'm involved in commercial real estate, and I develop mobile apps. Oswald choked on his beer. What nonsense is this? Here's a statement from the tax office. Here are bank statements. Here are the documents for the real estate. 2 shopping centers, an office building, a restaurant. Bart took the documents and began to study them. His face gradually changed. Is this real? Yes, Dad. And you know what's funny? Mom's been working at one of my companies for a week now. All eyes turned to Edith. Is that true? Bart asked. His mother nodded. She's my new boss. Integra Finance is owned by Delia. There was silence. Oswald stared blankly at the documents. Bart shook his head. Why didn't you tell us? Her father finally asked. Because I wanted to achieve everything on my own, and because I knew that if I told you, you would change the way you treat me, not as a person, but as a walking wallet. We wouldn't. Really? I took out a few more envelopes. Then explain this to me. I threw the photos and documents on the table. 3 years ago, a month after I left home, you took out a loan for $15,000. What did you spend it on? We needed to repair the roof. Here are the receipts. $5,000 went on repairs. The rest was a new TV, a vacation in Las Vegas, clothes. And when you had trouble making the payments, what did you do? Bart was silent. I know what you did. You hired a private investigator to find me. You wanted me to help you with the money. The investigator found my address, but when he saw the conditions I was living in, he told you there was nothing to get from me. We were worried. Don't lie, Dad. Here's the detective's report. I'm quoting. The girl works as a waitress, lives in a dormitory, and is clearly destitute. It is pointless to ask her for help. Oswald stood up and began pacing the room. Okay, let's say you really do have the money. So what now? Did you come here to humiliate us? No. I came to set the record straight. I got the last envelope. Here are the documents for the purchase of our house. I bought it from the bank when you couldn't pay the mortgage. Now it belongs to me. What? Bart roared. 2 months ago, the bank started foreclosure proceedings for non-payment. You would have been out on the street by Christmas. I paid off the debt and transferred the property to my name. So now you're kicking us out? No, Dad. You can live here as long as you want, for free, but on one condition. What? Never call me a loser again. Never say I'm a disgrace to the family because now you know the truth. I stood up and headed for the door. Where are you going? My mother asked. Home. To my $2 million home. Delia, wait. I stopped at the door. Yes? We can try to start over? Bart asked uncertainly. We can, Dad, but on equal terms. I'm not a little girl who can be humiliated and criticized. I'm a successful businesswoman who built her own life. And if you want to be part of that life, you'll have to accept that. I left the house and got into my car. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing at the window watching me leave. 3 years ago, I ran away from here feeling like a nobody. Today I was leaving knowing exactly who I was. The next day, Reginald greeted me with the morning mail and a smile. How was your family dinner, Miss Delia? Instructive, I replied, for all of us.